Those of you who have read Sri Aurobindo's letters carefully would have known of what he calls censors. Now, a censor is an entity which always points out to you your defects, your faults, and particularly when you are inclined to be satisfied with yourself for having completed a job or done something marvelous. It whispers, you have not done this, you have not done that. So this entity in your atmosphere, which always puts its finger on what you are supposed to have overlooked or failed to do, is a very helpful agency up to a certain point. But what happens in many cases is that this censor exceeds his brief. The censor not only points out real shortcomings, but exaggerates your shortfalls, introduces imaginary ideas of sin, of failure, incapacity, and if you go on listening to it, the censor demoralizes you. You have to draw a line of discrimination where this entity goes beyond the role allotted to him. Mother confesses that she has always had a censor in her atmosphere from very long time, always pointing out, this you have not done, this you have not said, this is not right, small things. One of the occasions, particularly in her later days, was in the course of the transformation of the physical body that was going on, she was passing through a stage when the body looked like disintegrating in a second. But the moment she switched on to a different wavelength, she would be in bliss, beyond time, beyond space. Once she says that when she was in great pain, she just thought of the Lord, and immediately things were restored to normalcy. But this censor immediately came to life and said, how can you disturb the Lord for this petty thing? for your body, comfort of your body, you are going to disturb him whose hands are full with so many important things. Then she said, she laughed at herself, because to her the whole idea, notion, conception of humanity, of what God is, what we should do and not do before God, all that thing came before her eyes. And she said, what a terrible joke. And there is the perception that if you are serious about realizing the divine, then your attitude has to be the divine all the time. All the time. There can be nothing to be excluded from your relations with the divine. All the time, everywhere. If the divine is present everywhere, if all life is intended to be an expression, a growing manifestation of the divine consciousness, what corner are you going to shut from God, saying that this is too small a thing to be placed before God? In the eyes of God, what is small and what is big? So she says, it should be a spontaneous and a natural movement to relate to the divine every part of your life. He says, even when you brush your teeth, comb your hair, wipe your face, it is an opportunity to dedicate that action to God, to the divine. You invest that action with a new importance in that. You relate yourself to the divine through that. And when you do that, however insignificant the occupation in human terms, it yields a different joy. Not that we should do it for the joy that it yields, but for the opportunity to weave a new thread of linking yourself with the divine. This habit of compartmentalizing worldly things, spiritual things, is a superstition and a dangerously wrong notion that has worked havoc. We shut out God, the divine, from half our life or 3/4 in confining him to the prayer room or to our meditation or prayer periods. The rest of it we say this is different and that is different. And we deprive ourselves of allowing the influence of the divine working in these segments of life that we keep for ourselves, for our desire ego. So, we can realize the full significance of our life only when we throw open all the doors and allow ourselves to be possessed by the divine in every activity. Thereby, nothing is allowed to be alien to the divine spirit. And when we develop this constant attitude of not thinking of the divine, but living with the divine, living in the divine, or allowing the divine to live in us all the time, always, everywhere, you begin to see the divine everywhere. And this capacity to sense, to feel, and recognize the divine everywhere is the surest way of eliminating what we call undivine things from our life. Once you begin to see the divine everywhere, you recognize that even behind what we call undivine, there is an element of divinity. Maybe it is covered, veiled by other elements. But because there is this divine element somewhere, even an undivine element is able to thrive, is able to live. Nothing can exist unless there is this core of divinity somewhere. It may have undergone a deformation, a wrong formation, but the thing in itself is divine. The form may be undivine. So what is undivine? You become a little more charitable, understanding, and see that what we regard as evil is an unfinished good. What is an error is an incomplete knowledge. Things are in a process. Nothing is static. Nothing is at this moment what it was a moment ago. Both Mother and Sri Aurobindo emphasize that this creation of ours is not a finished creation created by God one day and left to itself. It is a continuous unrolling of the divine. So when the question was asked, how is it that so many people are dying, so many wars are being fought with deaths, and still population is increasing? From where do those souls come? The answer is that the souls are coming out from the divine vast being, sparks of the soul every moment. So this creation is an increasing proposition every moment. It is not wholly right to say that nothing can be destroyed, all energy or whatever is indestructible and everything is always the same. No, everything is on a rising curve. New elements are released into the manifestation. New grades are being formed in the consciousness. New structures are forming in matter. That is because there is an incessant injection of the spirit in this world, and even certain scientific experiments have proved that the size of the universe is slowly increasing. The number of atoms, they are multiplying. Things that are coming to birth are more than things that are dying out. But dying out does not mean they disappear. They come back again. So in this unrolling of the divine in manifestation, if we see ourselves, we realize how ridiculous we are or we have been in sticking to something. I have said like this is true. You take a position and say I am right. It just can't hold next moment. In this volatile world, nothing is fixed. Everything is relative. No truth is final. No knowledge is ultimate. There is always a tomorrow. There is always an alternative. And as Sri Aurobindo observes somewhere, you have really known when you realize that the truth you have known does not exclude the truth of another. Both can be simultaneously true, because the divine reality is not of one piece, but it is multiple. And so, no use fighting for my position and your position. In my life, there have been many occasions when I have realized that so many things for which I fought, I stubbornly defended, honestly in the conviction that I was right, others were wrong. At some point of time, say after 20 years and 25 years, it looked so ridiculous that I began to wonder how I could have been that silly to waste my energy, to waste my time, to antagonize people, to hold to a position that I thought correct. Maybe I was correct, but others were not wrong. So this comes back to me every now and then, the futility of resistance, the futility of fighting for your opinions, positions, conclusions, poises. It is just not worth it. We do not have enough time, enough years to lose our hours, days, in ultimately what comes to what they call storm in a teacup. In a larger setting, it means nothing. I have always wondered how, with what infinite patience, Mother could bear all our tiffs, differences of opinion amongst ourselves, with each other, criticisms of each other. She would so patiently hear one person expounding how he is right, the other is wrong. She would also give the same time to another with great patience, though all the time she knew that both are wrong. So when we asked her, why did she not cut short and tell both that they are wrong, she said, no, that is not my way. Each one has to realize by experience this truth. If I tell, certainly they would do, but next moment they will go back to their position. It has no value for me. And I said that you have so much patience. She shook her head and said, nobody has an idea of what patience I have. Those words have stuck in me. And it is, I have lamented that we should have taken large chunks of our time and energy in making her support us individually in our wrangles in the collective life. We had no idea of the vast difference between her consciousness and ours. The tallest of us could not touch the least hem of her garment. Unthinkable. There has been no case in history of this combination of the occult and the spiritual as with the mother. For us, she was always a mother, and we exacted indulgence, latitude, charity from her. And when some of us woke up, we realized that what we had lost, and she had only an enigmatic smile when we confessed that to her. But she said, we live in eternity. Still, this perspective that life is given for something very precious, we can't afford to dissipate our energies, consciousness, thoughts in these goings round and round, futile things, is an idea that forces itself each year on me. And even today, this relativity of things, why we can't recognize? We are very philosophical when it concerns others, but we are very charitable when it concerns ourselves. So one day, when I was waiting for Mother on the staircase, the top floor, waiting for her to call, I clearly heard these words, be charitable to others, but severe to yourself. Not a very convenient message at that time in my life, but it has been a counsel of wisdom as years roll by, and I would share that with you all, that life is not worth fighting, struggling for advantages, positions, for rights in this world. Once you rise to a certain level, all these things look childish, very childish. And even a person like Mother, who lived in that transcendent consciousness, had occasions to say that I find myself to have been stupid. Of course, that's her way of putting things. We can't take it literally. But even with her, at the higher she goes, she finds things at a lower level meaningless. But she says, I have to work out the truth on that level. So I have to take cognizance of things. I don't want to avoid, I don't want to turn my back. And that is what we must do also. We have to live in the circumstances that are given to us, face the difficulties that are posed before us, but keeping all the while the idea that the divine is there everywhere. Nothing is too small, nothing is too great. Everything is a spontaneous linkage to the divine. And the entire life has to be built up in this mold of the divine, in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our desires and passions, in our physical activities. We have to make them conscious of the divine. If we let them be done by themselves, they are mechanical operations without any meaning for your evolution. But if you have the right attitude, what Sri Aurobindo calls being conscious, when you sweep, when you cook, when you fold your dress, if you do it consciously, alive to the consciousness in these things, each day you elevate yourself in consciousness. And after all, this is a yoga of consciousness. This is not Raja Yoga, this is not Hatha Yoga, not Kundalini Yoga, not Raja Yoga, but, or Patanjala Yoga, but a yoga of consciousness, where the essence of all the other yogas comes in. Without their elements coming in, you do not derive the full value of every sector of your life. The consciousness is here at the center, and from there you have to relate to everything. In this scheme, there is no room for self-condemnation, no room for condemnation of others. All are sailing in the same boat by and large. And Mother says the Lord has always a smile at all the foibles of the children. but a smile that is encouraging. Encouraging, that is emanating force and power to come up. Nobody is there to punish. We punish ourselves, but not God. Mother says that till she met her occult teacher, Theo, in 1904 or 5, she hated God. That is to say, the God of religions, the God of human conception, a superhuman personage, rewarding virtues, punishing sins, vices, and all that. She says, how could a being be there who is a fount of grace and love, who could be guilty of such wrongs as punishing helpless people? It was only when Theo pointed out to her and made her experience that God is not that, but within you. And when she experienced this God within, that sweetness, that love, that compassion and benevolence, you see, that made an entire difference to her whole outlook on life, to her relations with the divine God, God within. And she says, the Indians are fortunate that it is in their blood to feel God within. Everybody, even the most illiterate person, feels that God is there within me and within you. But she says, for a Western mind, it is very difficult to conceive of a divine presence within oneself. If we are fortunate, particularly more fortunate, because she has driven that truth in each one of us, or those who have come to her, it is our bounden duty to dig it deeper and make the inner divine a daily guide in our daily life.